Great. Good evening, everyone, and you are officially welcome to today's session as we have another talk amongst ourselves. So, from last week, what we realized is this is like a community where we come chit chat with ourselves, learn a thing or two from each other, and help us grow in our tech career. And today, we are fortunate to be discussing how to learn any programming language. And basically, it's not going to be like one person coming to share their experience, but then we all are going to be discussing, sharing our experiences, and also recommendations, if I say, or lessons that we've learned over the time. And yeah, so basically, that is what we are going to be doing today. So we're going to use a similar model as we did the last time, where I throw in some questions, then you share your experience with us. And I hope that everyone here will be able to at least talk to us, let us be able to contribute, then learn from each other. You don't have to be shy. We are all open to learning, and I think is the one of the best ways to uh, grow in this field. So let's see it as an opportunity to contribute as and when we are called upon. Okay, so the first thing to start with, how to learn any programming language. Let's do a quick round. What was the first programming language that you learned? If you have learned programming in any way or have started learning programming, irrespective of where you learned it from, I just want to know what was the first programming language you got exposed to. So from my left, we have Certifreak. Hi.
Yeah, hi Doc.
Yes. Good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm doing great.
You thank God. So share with us if you have any programming experience. What's the first programming language that you got in contact with?
Okay, so before I start, good evening everyone. Since I forgot to address everyone, so
Yes.
sorry for that. And the first language I learned was JavaScript, and um, I think the early years of, or yeah, in the early years of learning JavaScript, it gave me like serious headache. That was my first exposure to programming. Um, After learning JavaScript and um, passing the beginner level to intermediate, now I think like every other language I learned now seems very, very easy. But I think the most challenging part is getting a hold of the concept if you're a new beginner. That's the most challenging aspect of programming. But
Okay.
once they're able to grab just one language, you're able to grab the syntax, and that's it. All the language is very, very simple. As I said earlier on, the most difficult aspect of becoming a programmer is getting the first experience. That's the most difficult part. That one there for sure. It might even take someone 2 to 3 years
Mm.
just understanding the basics. It depends on how fast the person learns and what type of learn the person is. Maybe the person learns through doing or learns through maybe just reading or following what someone is doing. So I
Mm.
think all in all, it depends on yeah the type of learner the person is. But on my side to usually I learn by doing.
Okay.
So let's say once I get on a programming language, oh, I'm doing, let's say, for example, I learned about strings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right on, I wouldn't understand what strings are unless I try to break things up or why this thing is not working, why it's working.
Mm.
That's how I sometimes usually takes a while as compared to someone who just like just view something and that's all. So I think all in all, it depends on how people learn. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. Um, there are a few things that I noted down, and we'll discuss it along the line. So let's go to the next person. The next to my left is Laxis. Laxis, hi.
Hi, Doc. Good
Uh,
evening.
Good
Good evening,
evening. How
everyone.
you doing?
I'm fine. I'm good.
We thank God.
And you?
I'm also
Mm.
fine.
Oh,
So
that's good to hear.
great. You care to share with us any experience with regards to the very first programming language you learned, if you have, irrespective of where you learned it from?
Okay. I wouldn't say if I learnt it per
Hmm.
se. The first programming language I was exposed to was Python,
Okay.
and I just watched some videos, and so it was fun at first, and
Okay.
then I started seeing some things that I did not understand, and
Mm.
I'm not sure I really had fled then, so I just gave up until ALS came along and they thought about doing hard things, and
Ha ha ha.
it was what I was now exposed to. I wanted to use the pattern that I know some of my peers will say read textbooks, and when you
Mm.
read textbooks, you get practice, you pass what you see in the textbook and all of that. I noticed that it doesn't work like that for me.
Okay.
For me, I noticed that if I watch a video, 12 videos, and look at the text, I get to understand better.
Okay.
Plus, I don't just watch and stop there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was watching on For Loop, I saw how Jenny was the one that I think
Okay.
she's one popular lady.
Yeah.
She was breaking down For Loop. I watched her video on For Loop, and after watching, the next thing was on my mind was okay. Why she mentioned some things to try out. I tried them out. Some didn't work, and I asked myself why did it not work. So I had to start googling. And when I googled, I saw some of the things why it did not work. That I need to add some logic operators, and I got to my understanding about for loop from what she taught me got more increased from the video I was watching because I got to learn some new things that weren't in the videos, but I had just wanted to experiment and to learn some new things additional to what I saw in the videos. So now when I come back to the textbook, I now get the what is being said much better because I've practiced it, and when I'm giving a task to do, it's now much understandable. I know
Oh, okay.
what's what they need to do because I've been able to experiment per se in terms of what I've been able to watch. That's what works for me. I don't think reading is what works for me in the first place. I would rather watch a video that explains it, then come back to the textbook and everything gets more understood by me.
Okay. Thank you so much for that experience. I've also noted something down and we'll come back to it. Let's talk to the next person. Zikelia. Am I pronouncing it right? Oh, it's double L. Kela. Is that right? Hi, Kela. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, I'm not pronouncing the name right. Okay. Uh, Adeole. Hi, Adeole.
Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, so can you share with us your experience with, I mean, the first programming language that you learned?
Yeah. Yeah, that was my first programming language that really learned to coding, right?
Mm.
I'd played with some HTML, CSS, JavaScript, like just like basics, right? All those like snippets that you see, and that's what you try with your
Okay.
console. So I seen that, but I was not actually learning programming at the time. I was just like doing some research on what I'm trying to be.
when I wanted to get into tech, right?
Okay.
But the first programming language I learned to code in was C with ALXSE. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it was tough. Should I say it was? It is tough, right? So, like 30 Freak said, um, when you have to learn, like programming is, like I like programming is a different thing from coding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for you to code, you have to understand programming. So when you are new to programming, you have to learn programming concepts, as well as the syntax of whatever language is into learn. So that's often like the difficult part, the most difficult part for newbies, right? You're
Mm.
learning two things at once, and it's difficult, right? So you have to find. I'm still trying to find, right? But everybody, like you also mentioned, people learn ways, hanging out with Axis. Yeah. So I started off with YouTube videos and stuff. It was
Okay.
always like the easiest way when you run into a problem. Just go
Okay.
to YouTube and search videos on it. But I tried reading a book, the programming language,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually helped like a lot. Like it helped actually helped me enough to the point that I actually said, okay, maybe I actually do this, right? I had skills at the time, but having read the first two chapters of that book, like it grounded me. Like it explained the why, right? So when you understand why, it's easier to now figure out the details. So I understood some things about how the C was built and why it was built that what they intended to do. So that helped a lot. So a lot of the concepts that I wasn't actually grasping, it explained them for me, and that helped a lot.
Mm.
So recently I've switched to courses now, like there are free courses on a lot of sites, just to get, because I'm already familiar with the basics of programming now. It's just brush up. For example, I'm doing JavaScript now. Just a brush up on JavaScript syntax and stuff. Courses help. It's fast paced. You can do it however fast or you want, right? Yeah. But yeah, that's just it. Only that's my journey programming so far. Started with C and ran through Python and currently JavaScript.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I've also noted something down, probably a question, but we'll discuss it later. Okay. Ningasi, are you there? If you are there, you can join. I mean, accept the invite to speak, then share with us. Then Kela, probably I'm not pronouncing your name well. If I'm not, forgive me. But if you can hear me, you can also unmute and share with us. All right, so that is excellent. Share with us your first exposure to programming and how it felt like in everything. So at the end of the day, okay, let me share mine. I probably I would say HTML CSS. It's been a while and I really can't recall the exact one I started with. I know that along the line I came across Python videos. I started watching them. I didn't have means to practice, so I was just watching the videos trying to see what can be done with it, but then I ran away from it because I wasn't really getting what I wanted, like something that I can show to people that I've done. So eventually I settled more for the HTML CSS. And even when I started, think in my final year in high school, HTML CSS, I was using a book from the library and I didn't have a computer at the time. So funny story is I used to write the codes in my notebook, and I will only learn just like we are taught in school. Like I go to school and learn stuff. They ask me exams to reproduce it. So I learn the thing from the book, try and understand what the book is saying. Then on my own, I try to write out the code. Say, oh, okay, if I wanted something like this, how will I write it? And I'll write it in a book until somewhere in I think 2013, like late 2013, when I got a computer that I started learning to code in HTML CSS, and it was a good experience for me because then just as I said earlier, this time around I could do something and show to people, even though it wasn't like the most elegant of things that you are doing, but at least it feels magical being able to write some code and the code turning out to give some outcome that others do not know. Like, hey, I changed the color of a web page, like the background. I changed the background to blue, and they're like, how did you do it? I mean, I understand how I did it. So it was a great feeling, and basically that's how I got started with programming. Okay, so at the end of the day, what I feel helps a lot, especially for starters, is when you start on something that you really like, or you start doing something that you feel it's exciting, like you are excited about doing every single day. You wake up and you can't wait to start doing that thing. That's kind of spirit keeps you going, and I feel that it's good, especially for everyone who is new to programming. It's good for them to go on that journey where you start and you are excited about it and you want to go, because if you start with the frustrations, it becomes difficult to continue. Every now you are frustrated about what you are learning and the likes. Anyway, so that is my experience to getting started with programming. um, Harina, I've sent you an invite. You can accept the invite and join. Nana Kom, you're welcome. So what we are doing right now, the very first thing we tackled is sharing our experiences regards to the very first programming language that you came in contact with and how you tackled it. So that's what we've done right now. Then there were a few points that I noted that I think would have to discuss into details. Okay, but then from your own point of view, there's the next question I'm going to ask. From your own point of view, like what are some of the peculiar things that you consider as mistakes that you made when you started learning programming? For those of you who have actually learned programming, what, looking back, even if it is 3 days ago that you started, looking back, what do you think are some of the peculiar mistakes that you have made, or heard that they are mistakes? Maybe you don't know, but you've heard that they are mistakes. Anything in that line. So let's start. Haruna, you just joined us, so can you share with us? I'm guessing this name is something success. I can't really see it well. Is it Danny Six Success? You're welcome. I'm sending you an invite to join the stage. You can join. Harina, can you hear me? If you can unmute yourself and share with us. Otherwise, maybe I should start from Seti Freak again from my left. You mind sharing with us anything that you consider like a mistake that you have experienced over the time that you have learned programming? Or anyone who is ready can just unmute and share with us. Oh, so I want to believe that is
Okay.
Daniel successful. Yes, yes, certificate, go ahead.
Hold on, please. Haruna is talking. Can you hear him?
No,
I was saying,
Haruna is muted.
No, he's talking.
oh,
I can hear
okay.
him too.
Oh,
Or is
sorry
this set
then.
free?
Then he's muted on my end. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, so sorry about that. When I sent him the invite, not knowing it was, I mistakenly clicked mute, so I couldn't hear him. I could see that
I
he's
see.
muted.
Okay.
Haruna,
So
sorry
please,
about
Haruna,
that.
please go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
I hope I hope everybody can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So pertaining to, let's say, the mistakes that I've come across since I've started programming, even though I've not really done much programming, but the few things that I've realized is that mostly when starting, I started, let's say, I wanted to learn, let's say, many programming languages at a time. And I
Okay.
think that learning, or let's say, not taking one particular language at a time is a very challenging one for me now.
Okay.
So I think that's the mistake that I see I've been making.
Okay.
So, but I'm trying to put my attention on one language for now and see what will happen.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's what I have to share for now.
All right. That's good. We'll discuss it now. Let's listen to the next person. So learning many programming languages at a time. Yes. So certificate. Now you can go ahead.
Hold on, certificate. Haruna didn't tell us what programming language he started with.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Haruna, I believe he started with ALS. I guess. Haruna, share with us. What was the very first programming language you started learning?
Okay, for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I started with is HTML and CSS,
Oh, okay.
but with time I joined ALS and I had to stop it.
Okay.
So for ALS, they have been giving us plenty things, so I really don't know which language to focus on right now,
Mm.
but I'm trying to figure that one out.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's fine. It's interesting. Yeah. So certificate. Let's hear you.
Okay, so with regards to the mistakes, I personally make. I think most of the mistakes do. Most That's what most beginners do. Like for some strange reasons, usually, when you're a beginner, people will say, "Oh, learn HTML, learn Python. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy. Learn JavaScript."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like you get bombarded with so many information. But I think one thing most people have to know is, or need to know, is that you have to first determine what you want to do with programming
Okay.
before you venture into learning it. So let's say your interest is into gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with gaming, which language is okay for you? It doesn't necessarily
Exactly.
mean, oh, since everyone is learning Python, everyone is learning HTML, then I have to learn HTML before going to wherever I want to go. Because with the tech journey, it's a journey. It will take you a very long time. Okay. So if you keep on like following what's selling now without you going in for what you want, you end up like making mistakes. That's one of the main mistakes I made on my side. That's what I've realized. So usually, I tell people that, why do you want to learn programming, or why do
Mm-hmm.
you want to enter the tech field? With that in mind, you can figure out which language you would like to learn, be it being difficult or it being easy. No matter what, once it was built or written by a human being, everyone can learn it, irrespective of it
Mm.
being easy or not. So now there's been currently, like, there is I don't know, it's a campaign of people saying, like, learn Python, learn Python, learn Python. Meanwhile, the person doesn't know what he or she will be doing with Python, just
Okay.
because people are saying, oh, learn Python, and the
Exactly.
person will learn Python. And
Exactly.
at the latter part, the person will say, "Oh, so yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do X. I want to do Y." So even though you've gotten knowledge, you have to go back again. I'm not saying it's bad though. Actually, positive aspects inside, but the negatives outweigh the positives, because you'll be wasting most of your time learning something, even though the knowledge you've learned in that language is transferable. So that's one of the mistakes I've made on my side. And
Mm.
also, to another mistake I personally realize is getting stuck getting stuck in watching tutorials. That's the
Mm.
tutorial help.
No.
Like it's very serious. Let's say after learning something, or after learning a concept in, let's say, JavaScript, you feel like I've not learned enough. Maybe I should go and watch this other video or go and read this other, maybe I'll get a fair idea. Usually we understand it, but we don't really understand it to the core. The only
Okay.
way you can understand it to the core is by experimenting with it. To my side, that's what I realize. Because in as much as you are watching tutorials, they don't explain all the nitty-gritties of it. They just touch the surface. Oh, so you do this, you do that, and that's it. But once you keep on experimenting with what you've learned, that's where the core understanding comes in. Oh, so that means if this and this, the reason why I'm getting this is because of X and Y. So yeah, that's what I can see on my side.
All right. Thank you so much. And when you started talking about the first part, something I got a reminder about some few people who have reached out to me and how they reacted. With this specific example, someone reached out to me and was asking me, so which programming language should I start learning first? It's like you haven't given me any context. How do you want me to tell you which programming language to learn first? So my first question to the person was, why do you want to learn programming? Then this person just jumped to conclusion that okay, then Python it is. I'm like, where did you see me say Python? I haven't said anything. In fact, I've had like conversations like that where I even send people to go do research, go find out about things. Why do you want to get in there? What's your reason? What do you want to do? Like, you want to get into tech, you want to get into software development. Which part of it do you want to get into? So that at least you can, based on that, make a decision on which language to learn. Because just as I said, when you start learning, and the thing is something you are passionate about or something you enjoy doing, that you want to, like, you just can't wait to start doing it, then it's going to go a long way for you. Then you also mentioned tutorial help, which we would come to very soon. Let's listen to a few others about their mistakes. Then we can have the discussion around the points that have come so that we digest them all and pick the best for ourselves. All right, so Laxis, care to share with us what mistakes you have made over the period learning any programming language?
Uh, I would say the last even certificate mentioned, watching
Mm,
videos and just trying to rely on it,
mm,
it's one of those problems. You feel that if that is enough, and then you get to see one other problem, and you don't see the video tutorial that talks about it,
mm,
and you're frustrated. So it's actually a problem I faced,
okay.
and I got to learn that trying out new things helps. And I also learned too that I need to be patient with myself.
Mm,
There's this urge one has that you want to know it all at that point in time. You give yourself a period of time that I should finish, I should know all of this.
mm,
And then you reach, you see that period of time, at the period of time you set for yourself elapsed, and you don't get to know, and you feel that you've not made any progress.
mm,
And with that, one will start giving up. I remember I felt like giving up
okay.
until when I went back to the first tax we were given. That
Mm,
took me about 2 days to try to finish it off. And I was like, wait, did you really do this for 2 days? I was like, oh, this was just too easy. So that made me appreciate the progress I have made thus
mm,
far. Even though I feel I've not reached the point I want to, but I've made a progress. That's the
okay.
main thing. Has it been progress? Yes.
Mm,
So I've learned that I shouldn't be impatient with myself.
mm,
Move ahead. Don't focus on too much on the target you've set. It's good to have targets, but when you're not able to reach it, just tell yourself the like people told the not yet mentality. Just tell yourself you've not reached it. Then
mm,
look back at the progress you've made, and that will help you to still keep pushing on. Because I remember the times when I felt like giving up.
mm. That's
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 it for me.
inspiring. I like the fact that you mentioned patience and focusing on your progress instead of like a set target. So sometimes we set a very huge target that we want to reach far from our reach at a point in time, then it makes us feel as if we've done nothing. But then if you analyze critically, compare your today to your yesterday, you realize that hey, I'm better off, or like I've seen a little bit progress. Personally, it has always been my thing where I'm always trying to become better today than I was yesterday. So if I wake up today, I look forward to doing something or learning something that I didn't know yesterday. And I always feel good about it. Not only learning new things, but then sometimes I call these the the three major things that one should do all the time. The first one is learning. So you learn new things as and when you need to. Then there is relearning. There are things you've learned before but you've forgotten, but you need them, therefore you should go and learn it. Then there is unlearning. Okay, so you have to unlearn some of the things because when you learned it you thought they were the right things, but then you realize they are not the right things, so you unlearn them, learn new things. Then you also relearn some of the old things that you may have forgotten, but then your focus should be on your own progress and try to measure, as they say, count your blessings one by one. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that with us. um Daniel Successful, I guess that is you, the way this name is spelled. But then, if it is you or whoever, you can just unmute yourself and chat. AY Crown to welcome. Hi, is that Daniel? Oh, you just unmute and you've muted again. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yes. Good
yes,
evening.
this is yeah, this is Daniel Successful.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So
You're
actually,
welcome.
thank you very much for thank you very much for everything actually, and the privilege to be here and talk with talk with good and inspirational software engineers. So for me, actually, the mistakes based on I've I've done in the past is you know programming is something that uh, you need to be very very strict about. You need to be very focused and you need to be straight minded. So for me, the mistakes I did that I regretted is one. I was like, when I started actually, I was like thinking of, I learn, but which language will I. And then I went on doing some research and then I came across and I came across what they were saying about Python, that Python is actually a very, very, a very important, like a very, let me say, a very easy
Mhm.
going language that, you can come and then you learn like for 2 months and stuff, you'll be a software engineer and all of that. And then you get into the job and then start doing the job. I thought it was like that actually. So I wasn't very serious about it.
Okay.
I wasn't it. And I was like, okay, the thing is simple now. Since they said it's simple, okay, let me go on. Let me when I started actually with Python for 2 weeks and 3 weeks, I wasn't understanding anything. And I said to myself, I think they said this thing is
Mhm.
very simple.
Mhm.
I think they said, I thought they said this thing is very, very simple to understand. Why is it that I'm not even
Mhm.
understanding anything for 3 weeks and 1 month? I'm not getting it. And I was like, nah, this is not for me. You understand? So I was like, give courage and stuff. But at the time, I gave it everything. And, I gave it everything, all the focus. I was very serious about it. And I said, no, I cannot quit. I cannot stop. I
Mhm.
have to. And I found a way, and I was like, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I was understanding because all my focus and everything, I was understanding and I was implementing as well. I was doing, practicing, learning, and all of that. And I said, okay. wow, the thing is entering me now,
Mm,
stuff like that. But initially, the mistake I did was I wasn't very, very focused. I wasn't like,
mm.
I was like reluctant. I said, it's very simple now. Let me
Okay.
just do it like that. So it wasn't like that. I realized that no, it wasn't like that. You need to be very, very focused. You need to be very straight about this thing. So that's actually my mistake, though.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too for sharing that with us. And I feel a lot of people also get into your shoes, especially that can actually get down on people where you've heard so much about a language. This particular language is so easy, and you start learning it, and you realize that it isn't easy for you. Then you begin to feel dumb. Like they said it's easy, but I'm struggling. Why am I that dumb? Like, am I the only one who doesn't know? Like you feel bad about yourself because everybody says it's easy and you are struggling. So anyway, that's well noted, and we'll have to probably discuss that as well. Yes. So AY Crown, you're yet to hear from you. Are you there?
Okay, good evening, Doctor.
Good
Good
evening and
evening,
welcome.
everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, yeah. So about my mistake, I can't actually call it a mistake
Mm,
because I think the way I got into programming is I called because if I want to talk about my motivation, I would say I was motivated by the pay. You understand?
okay.
By the money.
Okay, sure.
So I called a friend that is already into programming, and I
Mm-hmm.
just asked that, okay, how can I get into? Because I'm saying this because I met you talking about people calling you and asking that,
Mm,
okay,
yeah.
what programming should I
Yeah.
learn?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was what he asked me to. I said I don't know anything about programming. I don't know. He said I should go and watch videos on like each programming, not even programming languages. He was trying to persuade me that like coming to tech is not about programming alone. Like you can do other stuffs apart from programming. Like you can do all those maybe data analysis and video editing and other stuffs. So I said I just want to program. Like I want code. So he said, okay, if I want to code back end, front end. I said I don't know anything. So I think the problem is that I just want to do it, and instead of doing my due diligence, so he told me to look into HTML and CSS, like I should just start from there.
Okay.
And I downloaded some tutorials and books, but I couldn't bring myself to learn. Actually, like
Mm,
I would just I would just open my laptop with the HTML CSS textbook, but it wasn't making any sense until
mm,
someone sent ALX link to me and I joined. Do you
mm,
understand? So I would say what I just learned is that I know I can't learn on my own if I don't have a structure like this kind of structure that ALX has given to us.
mm,
So, and what I've learned from ALX too is that you have to be realistic with yourself.
mm-hmm.
Do you understand? Because when we started with C as a programming language, and I wasn't getting it then. So I just told myself that okay, you can't go on like this for a year. Do you understand? Instead of just roughing it through, like just copying codes and thinking you are making progress, I had to differ. So like
Mm,
I would say like my best decision ever like for this
mm,
year is the fact that I do understand because it was when I deferred and now at time like okay I deferred in I joined February cohort,
mm,
so I had to defer to May. So during that time, in April, so I was learning C programming on my own. It was
mm,
then I realized that I can actually like it's something I can know. Do you understand? Like
mm-hmm.
I was working with Jenny's lecture, so it was making sense to me. I was like, wow, I can actually learn this thing. So when we started again, it wasn't that cryptic again because I was familiar to all of them, to some of the basic stuffs. So it helped me. So being realistic to oneself, like just evaluate yourself. That's okay. Am I really making progress? Like, does it really make sense? So I think that's what I've learned so far. So
Okay.
because I'm just, yes, like being realistic to yourself is just the lesson I've learned. Because
Mm.
if I was just trying to trying to cover
Follow.
up in a
Mm.
way that, okay, let me just continue to do it, I'll get it later, because it wasn't getting better then. It
Mm.
wasn't like every day you just see something like I couldn't. What's funny about it is that even hello word program, like to write hello word program and print it out, I couldn't do it then.
Mm.
You understand? Like if
Yeah.
I wasn't like keen or copying something, like just open your terminal and write C code to print hello world. I couldn't do it
Mm.
until I deferred and I had time to go through it myself before we started the game. So being realistic to oneself is very important. So that's just it.
Excellent. Be realistic to yourself. So you should know your weaknesses. You should know your strengths. Know when you need to take a break. Know when you need to reset your mood and start all over again. And I like the fact that you didn't just follow the crowd, because sometimes we are tempted to do that. That hey, everyone is doing this, so let me also do it. But then you sat down to analyze your situation and said, okay, I think I'm struggling. Let me take some time off, do some personal studies, then get back involved in the game again. All right, so thanks for sharing that with us. um Next person who hasn't spoken, Nana come. Hi, have you started learning programming? Hi, Nana come.
Please can you hear
Yeah, we can hear you now.
me? Actually, there's this film that
Are you speaking? I can't hear you.
hello. Life is really too fast. Hello.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Please can
Okay.
hello.
Yes, I can hear you now. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There is this problem that I created for myself the time that I wanted to learn programming.
Mm,
That was I was having the mentality that I can learn a lot of programming languages
mm,
within a short period of time. But
okay.
that wasn't how to do it. So I'll just learn a little CSS, little HTML, JavaScript. At the end of the day, nothing was stuck in my head. I begin to wonder why
Mm,
am I not getting all of them? I was just creating confusion here and there. And I quite remember I asked you the what or which particular programming language should I start learning?
mhm.
As you said, I'm one of them. So I wasn't taking it easy. But you asked me a certain question. Why do you want to program? Why do you want to enter into tech? I didn't answer that question. You asked me on WhatsApp. I didn't answer. I went down there, started wondering why this question. Why should I answer? How? What should I tell you? I was so confused. So I just realized I just have to start little by little. It doesn't take just more time to become what you want to be. It's just little by little. So I started learning small, small, and now I think I'm good to go now.
Okay, that's good to hear. So taking on too much, I think someone, Haruna also mentioned it earlier. Taking on too much that you can chew, especially when you are just starting. So that is good and well noted. Hi, Adewale.
So yeah, mistakes. There've been a lot, a lot. You see,
Mm.
see, I mentioned earlier that programming and coding are two different things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is the majority of the difficulty for beginners to coding, just learning the concepts. So a lot of times I was focused on syntax
Mm-hmm.
and the actual ideas, right? I tend to solve particular problems, but if you gave me a different problem of a similar thing, I wouldn't be able to solve it.
Mm.
Like, or maybe after hacking through a program, like reading the compiler errors because it was C, right? I was able to
Yeah.
fix it. So it wasn't until I actually started reading C programming language that I understood some concepts that were tripping me up.
Okay.
For example, I couldn't understand function morphology, like how to get the return value of a function, how it was designed. It was tripping me up so much until I understood that the function is just a code block. It can actually
Mm.
be in your main program body, you're abstracting it away. And immediately I understood that concept, I could then read a function. Okay, this is the
Mm.
return value, this is the declaration, this is the body and everything. So the, the main mistake that I made was I didn't understand concepts. I didn't try to understand the concepts before, like just moving on. I said, okay, this is the hello world program. There's a line that has the include directive. Okay, cram that. And there's a main function, int main void, cram that. And then you call printf, and then you say hello world. Right? So that was how I was trying to learn programming. Until I understood what those individual elements were and what they're supposed to do and why it was done, right? Because that's the
Mm.
detail of implementation, right? Every language does the same things in a slightly different way.
Mm.
So when I started understanding those things, it made it now easier to understand. And then I could now see alternative ways of doing things, right?
Okay.
So, for example, I was trying to explain to someone about 2 weeks ago that when you make a call to printf, and you don't add any just print the string literal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's either going to be substituted for a call to the puts function, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't have been able to understand that because when I was cramming the hello world program in C, it was a printf I was cramming. I was not saying, okay, this is a function that you call that is an output function, right? So understanding those elements, okay, what does the hello world program do? It prints hello world or whatever string you're using, right?
Yeah.
To the screen. That's basically what it does. Once you understand that, you can understand the elements there that is there. There's always an output function, right? So you want to print to the screen. Then your language will determine how that program is structured. C, you want to include the standard library header because that's what the definition of printf is, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Python or JavaScript, you don't need to do that. They are ready to go. You can just call the print function. Yeah, so when I started understanding those concepts, it made it much easier for me to now grasp. Okay, and I might have gone too far in the other direction. I'm now trying so much to learn concepts, and the syntax still trips me up from time to time, right?
Mm.
But I feel that's better than the alternative. Yeah. Then
Okay.
another problem I had was getting, and it was also because I didn't understand the why, right? The reason behind.
Mm.
I was getting stuck on a particular way of doing things, right? So if I saw somebody do something in a particular way, um, that's all I would. I'll just, okay, this works. You can
Okay.
use this way, and that in my mind that was the way to do it. When I was seeing other ways, it didn't used to scale for me. Like it's like, what's this? It doesn't make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a problem for me when maybe like the way I knew didn't work, right? For example, you're used to using a for loop. Sometimes you want to use a while loop. Maybe you don't know how many iterations your loop has to run, and you can't just switch between one and the other because you don't understand the reason why you are choosing one or the other, right? So that happened to me. And those are my two biggest problems in programming. Obviously, I think I've moved beyond that stage and there are new problems, but yeah, that was basically my problems with coding and programming, right?
Okay.
So now I try to separate the concepts, like understand what the concept is, the why, and the how will come to you once you understand the why. That's what I
Mm.
believe.
All right. That's excellent. And I want to build on the rest of the discussion from where the points that you made about concepts and syntax. So the question is, if I want to learn a programming language, at least everyone here that has spoken so far has some experience with learning a programming language. So now, if I feel that there are two different scenarios, but let's look at both scenarios. If let's say I'm totally new to programming or I'm yet to grasp the concept of programming, it's like I'm not a master. I usually don't like to use the word master. Like I can't really say that I know a programming language, just that I have an idea and I'm trying to learn. That's one thing. Then on the other side, hey, I've learned enough of one programming language. I'm very confident about my knowledge in that programming language, and at least I can maneuver my way around that language. So in these two cases, if I want to take on, say in the first case, if I want to learn a programming language, which one should I focus more on, the syntax or the concept in that language? Then the second case is where I have learned a programming language before, like I know these programming concepts. So let me take somebody like myself. If I want to learn a new programming language, do I now focus on the syntax of the language or the concept? Well, what do you have to say about it? Starting from Adeole.
Yeah, well, it depends, right? It depends. So, like, I often joke that they're basically in programming, there are just 10 concepts you need to learn to become a developer. Just 10 concepts. Recursion, functions, stuff like that, like objects, like inheritance, stuff like that. Just it's a joke, right? But basically, there are things that are common to all programming languages. And you program enough, you understand that it's not really a hard and fast rule, but basically, that's it. All programming languages, all modern programming languages have functions, right? They have some data structures, arrays or lists, depending on how they are called in that language. They have a hash table or a hash map, which is now expressed as different things. In Python, that's a dictionary, right? So if you understand the concepts, right, to pick up the syntax is easy. So I have a friend that works as a software engineer, and the company switched. Was is in the middle of switching, not they've not switched yet, but he had to pick up Rust, and they gave him 6 weeks to pick up Rust. And I'm talking about to production, like he's going to production. So he already understands the few programming languages, and they say, okay, this programming language, you need to pick it up, and you expect that in 6 weeks you go up to speed, right? Because he has experience and he understands the concepts. So yeah, for me, it's always concepts first, right? Concepts first. Yeah. Obviously, if you are new to programming, this is where I said it depends. You cannot understand the concepts so much if you don't understand what the code is doing. So syntax also matters, right? So when you're learning, you can say, okay, this is this, and to do this, you need to do this, right? But once you understand those concepts, the syntax, it becomes easy to read code. Even if you can't exactly follow the intricacies of the language, you can now read the code that, okay, you're taking inputs from user here, and this is a function call, and this is recursion or something, right? You can just follow like vaguely through. You can follow through code, even if you don't understand everything that's happening there, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you perfectly on that. Where the issues relating to understanding concepts. Uh, Mostly when, especially ALS students, reach out to me and they are complaining about, hey, I'm not able to. I mean, I'm struggling. I can't solve the ALS tasks and like all those sort of complaints. My first question is like, do you understand the concept you are learning? That is my first thing. At the end of the day, it's not about writing the code that's past Betty. Like you are not starting out. Do you understand that when we say a function, this is what it really means? Like this is how you can get to use it practically. At least when it comes to the implementation of the concept, that's when you now consider, okay, what is the syntax for this? But then if you don't understand that thing and you know the code but you don't understand what is happening, at the end of the day you are just let's say solving questions because you've been given some prompts. But in a situation where you have to come up with something of your own, then you no longer have prompts to tell you. I feel that sometimes even the ALS, I'm not saying that it's easy. I know it's difficult, all of that, but I feel that sometimes they've made it easy for us because they've given us prompts. Like all the projects that we are doing, they give you prototype of the function. Imagine nobody will ever give you a prototype for any function that you are going to create by yourself. If you are working, you should know, how do I create a prototype? I need a function to perform this role. How do I create a prototype for this particular function? So I also agree that learning the concept is very important. However, just as I gave two scenarios. So for those who are now trying to grasp the full understanding of programming and everything, your focus should be more on appreciating the concepts, but then you should also be learning the syntax of that first language that you have chosen. So that is where it becomes a problem when you start learning multiple languages at the same time, because you get confused. You are learning different syntaxes here and there, even though it's similar concept or even the same concept. So we have, I mean, those of us here have already mentioned that learning multiple languages at the same time when you are just beginning out is a mistake. Like it's something that can worry you in the long run. So sticking to one and focusing on understanding the concept, then being able to implement it based on the syntax of that language is the ideal case. The other end, where you have already learned a new programming language, with the example that you gave, hey, you need to pick up a new programming language in 6 weeks. And when you've gotten to that level where you already understand the concept, or you mentioned that there are about 10 concepts you need to know, you already know all of these. So when you pick the new language, all you care about is, how do I implement this thing in this language? Like, hey, I want to print something to my screen in this particular language. How is it done? Because I happen to be a PHP developer, and in PHP we're using Echo. You use Echo to output things. So it was strange to come and see, hey, print or print F, and now everywhere you are going, this is using print. And if you started from JavaScript, you move from console.log, and now you are seeing Echo or print F. They sound strange, but then you know that basically all of these are just to print something to the screen. So if I want to print something to the screen in this new language, how do I do it? If I want to create a function in this new language, how do I do it? So Python will say, hey, you need to create a function, write def before the name of the function that you want to create, blah blah blah. When you go to JavaScript, hey, how do I create a function? Then a whole lot of things are coming in. So all you do is, I know what a function is, I know what implies to create a function. I can create one, but I need to know the specifics for this particular language. So if you are just starting, I feel that you should focus more on understanding the concept. If I call you at any point in time to explain a concept to me, and you can explain it to me for me to understand, if I didn't have any idea, then I think that you understand it, and that is good for you. And now you can then focus on learning, how do I implement this. But a lot of us worry so much about learning the implementation without understanding the concept. So when they make a mistake, something is not working, they can't what's the word, troubleshoot it, or debug the code that they've written, because they don't understand the problem, I mean the concept. And that's what we see a lot with ALS students. And of recent times, I feel that maybe those plenty checks that we do right from the beginning, like Betty checks and things, I feel that maybe from the very beginning they shouldn't be that necessary. Let the students focus on understanding. And I'm saying this just for us, so that when you are learning things from the beginning, I feel that you should focus more on understanding the concept. Like once you grasp the concept, now focus on the syntax, build knowledge in the syntax, how to use it, best practices. It is good to learn the best practices right from the beginning, but then if it is going to take you a lot of time, I feel you should learn more of the concepts than the syntax from the beginning. Yes. So any other contribution towards that? We are running out of time, so I have to speed up a bit. Any other
Yeah,
contribution towards
so
that?
I kind
Mm,
of agree, but at the
mm-hmm.
same time, I kind of disagree.
All right, that's
Right?
fine. Let
So,
me hear you.
okay, I think for if you use like the Betty Linter
Mhm,
was, I think it was difficult for most people because because the nature of C and because a lot of people were new to programming. I've
mhm,
come to appreciate um, the usefulness of linters, right?
mhm,
Not
mhm.
really for the ALX method of you have to make your code pass the lint check
Mhm.
for scores, but because linters are useful for lexical and syntax analysis of your code, right?
Yeah,
So they are useful. Um, Obviously, you want to get comfortable coding in a particular way. So you code to a standard, right?
yeah.
You're coding, if you're writing C for ALX, um, Python for ALX, JavaScript
Mhm,
for ALX, there's always a lint check you have to pass. Otherwise, even if you're writing bash scripts, right? So
mhm.
we had Betty for C, Microstar for Python, we had shell check for bash, and we have semi-standard for Python, right?
Mm.
So it's just new use writing to standard. So a lot of people, when you get to revelations, really mid to large size revelations, they have their own internal
Yeah.
style
Yes.
that you
Yes.
want to perform. Yeah. So the experience of coding to a style is important,
Very
but at the same
important.
time, it trips people up, right? And that's why
Mm.
usually ALX gives you a few projects, very side projects, a new language. At least when it's at least earlier in the program, you get a few projects to get more used to the syntax before you start having to pass a lint check, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree that it trips people up a lot, right? So
Mm.
then, as I won't go into that because it's kind of different, but yeah, people need to understand that your code can work. There's a difference between good code and functional code, right?
Yeah.
You can have code that runs and
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
From not from the whether it's from a performance perspective or the quality of the code, rather your the quality of the code where you're using good variable names, how
Yeah.
you structured your code, how you documented it. That's different. So yeah, why it's better for you to learn to write good code, right?
Yes.
First. But
Very
I think
important.
maybe you are right about the structuring. Maybe learn to code first, then conform to coding standards.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's basically what you have said. I feel that, hey, if you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, learn, like, let's get a person started learning. Let a person get started riding. Then now we tell you, okay, now that you are riding, or in the course of you being able to ride, say, hey, you don't shake yourself like this, you don't tilt yourself like this. Okay, but if the person is now starting, the person doesn't know how to ride a bike, and you're now teaching them best practices. When you're riding, you don't do this, you don't, the person doesn't know how to ride. So that's basically what I'm saying. It's very important, just as you said. When you go, almost every company, at least, they have their style guide, they have like their coding best practices and things that you need to follow. So by teaching us those things, we are like, hey, you are to follow this routinely. If you don't, your code is not going to check. So at the end of the day, when you go out there in any company at all, you don't struggle. You just, what is your standard that you use here? Let me just follow that standard and write the code. So that is excellent. But if it's going to set us a barrier, I feel that anybody who wants to start learning, we should eliminate as much barriers as possible. Let them get into the flow, let them flow, feel that, hey, yeah, I'm learning, I'm making progress, I understand what is happening. Before you bring in the constraints, then they now say, oh, okay, so I learned this thing, but then this is the best way to do it. Oh, okay, now I've understood that this is why we did that, but anytime I need to do it, this is the standard I need to follow. Yeah, so that's basically what we have all said, I guess. All right. The next important thing that came up during the course of sharing experiences was, I heard people saying, whether you are reading, is it like reading textbooks, you are watching video tutorials, or uh, learning by doing and the rest. So the question is, like, which of them is the best way to learn a programming language? And I feel that a lot of people ask these questions like, what's the best way to learn this programming language? And even in the course of sharing the experiences, I feel a number of us also mention the answer. The answer is it depends on you, irrespective of, I mean, the programming language or whatever. It all boils down to you as an individual. What way do you learn best? So someone said, I learn best when I practice. So I can't just watch video tutorials without practicing. If I do that, I don't get the concept. If I start writing it out, making the mistakes myself, then I get to learn and understand. Somebody also said that I learn best when I use textbooks. Others says, I think Adeoli said he learns best watching videos. So I feel that you should know yourself. Sometimes you don't know. Like people have reached out where they are not sure which one works best for them. I say, hey, go try any of them. Okay, like somebody like me from school, I've tried studying at dawn, like I've tried studying afternoon time, I've tried studying night time, because people used to say, oh, when you study at night, that's the best. When you study at dawn, that's the best. And all of that. And I tried all of them, and personally I feel that any time of the day that I'm studying, I'm equally effective, provided I eliminate the distractions that are there. So at the end of the day, it boils down to you as an individual. What's the best way to learn? How do you get most of the value? Anytime I learn things, I learn by reading books, I watch videos, I read blog posts, I read documentations. Like I use any means to learn. So if you reach out to me and you say, Obed, what's the best way to learn a programming language? I'm like, it depends on you. What works best for you? When you read, do you understand? Like when you read from textbooks, do you understand math? If textbooks work best for you, go for textbooks. If it is videos, watch the videos. But then I think ultimately, irrespective of the means you are using to learn, it still boils down to practice. Without a practice aspect, you are not going to make much progress. Even when you feel that you really know the thing because you understood every concept the person said, and or when you sit down to write a code later, it becomes challenging. That is my thought on it. What do you think about that as well? What is the best way to learn a programming language? If someone, maybe after this life, somebody asks you, well, what are you going to share with them? Yes, anyone. We just need two people. All right,
There's
Adele.
no best way. It's just three things, right? You need to learn, you need to understand. However you want to learn is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, as I recommend a mix of media, right? You
Mm-hmm.
use read a book or a tutorial, watch a video, or follow a course. Doesn't matter, right? Just have a way of getting of learning that resource. Understand it. There's always when you read something as an adult, it doesn't matter how difficult or simple it is. You always get some after reading something, you kind of understand it. You may not
Mm-hmm.
actually get it, but you have that um, rough understanding. That thing is very deceptive. You have to go beyond it. That's where the understanding comes in. You have to actually understand the concepts. That's where the why comes in, and the how becomes clear. Then, even when you get to that stage, it's still not concrete knowledge. You have to practice, right? I think is that practice that actually makes you makes the knowledge become your own. That's my experience, right? When
Mm.
you practice repeatedly, and that becomes your own. Like for example, for those of us the ALXSC, because ALX kind of forces us, right? It did actually force us, but you can go outside that, but you have to work on the terminal. And when you write your code, you want to push to GitHub. You've done that Git add, Git commit, Git push. I think we've done 6 months of ALX now, right? Over 6 months. So many times, probably thousands of times that you can never forget that process again. So
Mm.
it's practice. It doesn't matter if you stop using Git from the command line. In 50 years, if you have to do it, you'll remember it, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might take a while for it to come back, but that muscle memory is there. The practice is actually what makes you a master of something. Is that practice,
Mm.
right? And when you practice something often enough, you have like deep understanding, and you can then tweak it, right? So, for example, about a few months ago, I stopped using the Git add, the Git commit, Git push, because I created aliases and then I created a script, right? It's because I've done it often enough that I understand the flow. I've made mistakes, and I understand. Okay, I can do this first, then do this, right? Or I can combine these two commands. It's just practice. So it doesn't matter how you start. When you get the knowledge, you watch a video or you read a tutorial, or maybe just someone doing it. You're just watching somebody doing it, right? Try to understand the why and the how, right? That's all you need to do. The implementation is different, and there are often multiple ways to build problems in programming, but the why is the actual problem, right?
Mm.
When you get that, like, you understand, it's practice that will make that knowledge yours. That will make that's where the mastery comes in. I think you've done so often, right, that you don't think about it anymore, right? It's just so common. Even when like you make a mistake, that you slip a key and make a typo when you do something in the command line, it doesn't even bug you anymore because you already know what the mistake was and you can fix it. That's practice, right? So practice is literally the key, right? So just practice. That's how you can master something, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you intuitive or not, you still need to practice, right? There are things that you see and they make sense to you immediately, right? This makes sense. But if you don't practice them, you don't master them. And I think that they are obtuse to you when you see them, like you don't understand at all. But with practice, you will master them, right? A lot of people complained about the command line when we started in May. They didn't understand anything about Git. So they don't to Git and GitHub was ALXSC, right? But now they are fairly like proficient with it now because of practice. So that's just it. Practice is the key. Whatever, however you learn, however your understanding comes, just practice, and that should be like the majority of your learning process, right? You learn, you try to understand, and then you practice.
Great, great, great. So I like the fact that you kept saying, however, like however you learn, however you do. At the end of the day, it's practice. I would have loved to build on the practice part. Um, Unfortunately, time is fast spent. So the question that I was going to throw, maybe we'll discuss it some other time. Think through it. What I also feel is that, well, we say practice, practice. Everybody knows that practice is good, but there are some people who are like, what do I practice? I mean, you said I should do projects, but what projects? You said I should practice. How? Like, practically, how do you approach that? So maybe at another time we would take a look at that and see, go deep into it, so that people who are now struggling or trying to find their feet will also appreciate how to go about this practically. So that sometimes the advice we get out there or you hear people give, it's laudable. You think about it and it makes so much sense, but when it comes to you and applying it, you feel like, how do I do this? So he said I should practice what I learned, but how do I practice it? Okay, so we'll probably talk about it some other time. Let me just recap some of the things that came up in the course of our discussion. One is tutorial hell. Tutorial hell, and basically that is watching tutorials or reading tutorials over and over and over. So it still goes back to not practicing. So you keep learning, and when you realize is that after some time you forget, and you have to go back to that same tutorial to go and learn again. So how do you prevent that? The answer is practice. So we'll probably have to still talk about how to practice in order not to get into tutorial hell. Then we had issues with learning multiple programming languages at a time. I feel that there are some people who are capable of doing that, and that isn't a big deal if you are strong enough to take that route. But if you are someone who is totally new and you are still struggling to understand the language, that is when I don't think it's best to get into it. So sometimes even with say HTML, CSS, somebody is about to start learning HTML, CSS, and they say, "Hey, learn HTML, CSS." So the person goes starts learning HTML and they start learning CSS, and CSS doesn't make sense to them. Like you get confused because you haven't even learned HTML. So if you are talking about selectors in CSS and their specificity, you are wondering how does this even apply? Okay, so at the end of the day, you need to learn, like, let me use a practical example. Say going to learn a framework, a web framework. Let's use an example, Python web framework like Django. So, oh, I want to learn how to build websites, and because I mean the person you are talking to knows Django and he uses Django to build a website, so, oh, go and learn Django, forgetting that you need to know Python before you learn Django. And you jump into it, starting to learn Django, and you realize that, oh, I don't really understand what is happening. So that is a big deal. Or you just started learning Python and you think that you want to learn, I mean, Python for web development. So immediately you started learning about the concepts of Python. You also coupled it with learning Django, and you begin to get confused along the line. So that is where it becomes a problem. And maybe to me, I feel that if you are still struggling, you are yet to really grasp the concept, you shouldn't try that. Even when you are a master, I mean, if you don't dedicate enough time, you may not get the whole thing. And sometimes I feel that that is like a problem that I personally face, because I learn a lot of things. I don't care what, like, I'll learn. I mean, it's not just about programming. I like learning personally. So anything at all that interests me, hey, show me, I'll learn. Video editing, I've learned it. Photography, I've learned it. Using softwares to edit pictures, like anything that interests me, so far as I see it, I'll learn it. So somebody like me who has a disposition for learning things, I'm always tempted to learn the newest thing that is coming up. But then I've also learned that sometimes a lot of things slows you down. Okay, you could have mastered one language so that when you start learning the second language it becomes easier, but then you were giving multiple attentions, like your attention was divided attentions, I think is the right word, was divided amongst learning a lot of things, and at the end of the day you learn small here, small there, small there, small there, and you can't really lay hands off on what you know. So from our discussion so far, I think would conclude that it's best to focus on learning one thing at a time and mastering it to some extent, then you can move on to others. Then another point that I noted down was not having a clear cut vision of what you want and letting that inform what programming language to learn. Okay, so that is also something we should be looking at. Don't follow the crowd because everyone is saying learn Python, because everyone is saying learn JavaScript. You also just jump into JavaScript. And I think when we had our first Techpadies talk, we discussed this to an extent. So always know what and why you are choosing to learn a particular programming language. It is going to help you a lot. Then one point that we didn't bring up, but I've personally experienced and I would want to share before we end today's session, is spending all your time on researching about what to learn instead of doing the actual learning. So there was a time when I needed to pick up a framework for PHP. I was doing a project. In fact, I even started writing my own framework in PHP at the time, but later I realized that it was too much work and security was not guaranteed and all those things. So I needed to switch quickly to one of the major frameworks out there for a project that I was working on. So I started, which of the PHP frameworks is best? Like, which one should I focus on? I started doing a lot of research and it took me days. Like, I was reading comparison articles, differences articles, like people and their opinions on things. So I think at the time I was considering Code Igniter and Laravel, these two frameworks. Which one should I use? Which one should I use? Eventually, after a long while, I settled on Code Igniter. learnt it, use it to build an application. Then the next one that I wanted to build, I went to do that same research and I realized that for this one I need Laravel more than Code Igniter, and how to go and learn Laravel. So at the end of the day, I know Code Igniter, I know Laravel, but I'm not a master at any of them because I just spent some few time learning this and using it to build something and leaving it to another. But the point I'm making here is that I wasted a lot of time trying to decide which framework to learn, whilst I could have used that whole period to do the learning itself. So if you are going to make a decision on what to learn, hey, is if you have people that you can talk to, just jump on a call or anything, talk to them. I want to do this, what do you recommend and why? Straight start learning. Like, I mean, anytime people reach out to me, I want to learn, and they start giving excuses, I'm like, hey, the point is get started. Okay, it's better than nothing. If I had chosen Code Igniter earlier and learned it within that 2 week space that I was doing research, I could have used that time to learn the language. Then maybe by that 2 weeks I realized that, oh, this is not what I need, I can just leave it, go to the next one, but I wouldn't have wasted the time. Okay, so very important, don't spend all your time watching YouTube tutorials on which language should I learn next, or which language is the easiest to learn, or between say Flask and Django, which one should I learn, between Python and JavaScript, which one should I learn. Those YouTubers, they are trying to create that content just to get clicks because that's what people like. And if you spend all your time watching them, that is what you are definitely going to end up on. Yeah, so I think I have mentioned a few things that I noted down, and it has been an interesting discussion. Any final words before we bring the session to an end? So you can unmute yourself and share final words, your thought on some of the things we've discussed, something that we probably didn't make mention of, or you want to share your opinion on that, you disagree with a particular thing that someone said. I mean, it's a community for us to learn and help each other. Yes, anyone?
Okay,
Yeah.
hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Haruna, go ahead.
Okay, what I also want to add is that, like, uh, during the process, I've also learned that, like, how we also feel about how our days progressing
Mm-hmm.
has is also having a much impact on our development. Like sometimes I feel like this guy is learning the same language that I'm learning, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't do what he's doing.
Mm.
Why? And sometimes it demoralizes me
Okay.
a lot. So we should also pay attention to what others' progress are in terms of our own feelings and stuff. That's what I just want to add.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think you're not alone in that. There was one time somebody reached out to me on Twitter thanking me for the content I'm creating, but then the person said he or she, I don't remember, is sad. Why they are sad is because they are doing the same program as I am, and they don't understand why they don't get the concept the way I get it and I explain it to others. So it makes them feel so sad about it. And when I read that message, I became sad myself because the goal was, hey, let me share what I know with others to help them. But if at the end of the day someone is feeling bad about you sharing your knowledge, then is it really the right thing you are doing? So the thing is that there is always going to be someone who is better than you, irrespective of what. And I personally have learned this the hard way because growing up, I have always been like the best student, like in every class. But then there are places in my life. I think my first huge failure was when I went for you are in Ghana, so you know this, the National Science and Maths quiz, and I lost. I mean, it was devastating, but that was when I learned this big thing that there is always someone who is better than you, irrespective of what. And it should not worry you so much because you don't know what a person has gone through. You don't know what a person is actually doing to get there. So, someone mentioned earlier that you should rather focus on your own progress. Okay, so, for instance, you are saying that we've all been learning programming. Let's say we all joined ALS. We are doing the same program. We are in the same cohort. But then you see what I do, and you're wondering. The question is, do you know like how much the time the person is putting in? Somebody like me, even though some of the things that we were learning were new, they were not really new because I have programming experience, and I have been in this field for like 8 years. 8 years. It's like I've been trying to teach myself programming for like 8 years. So there are things that I might have come across, like I don't know that I know, but I might have come across along those 8 years. That the moment I read it this time, it clicks. Okay, there is in science, or I mean biology, you can say that there is a neural link, like neurons, there is interconnection between the neurons that creates the ability to appreciate or understand what is happening. Oh, so all these were this thing that I didn't understand. This is why. Then it clicks. The moment you read it, it clicks. But if you haven't gotten that exposure, it becomes different. So yes, we all started a program before. Let's say you did say uh, any course, depending on what you study. Somebody studied something else in school, they taught them some things, he didn't even realize that this is connected to programming. But then you start reading programming and the things are beginning to connect, the dots are beginning to connect, and you are struggling and you are trying to compare yourself to the person that I'm not good enough. No, that isn't it. And on another hand, like as I said, how many hours somebody's using to learn. If when people reach out and they are trying to compare some of these things with me, I'm like, hey, relax. Like somebody like me, I'm doing the extreme. Like I'm really doing the extreme. So you shouldn't say that because you can do this and I cannot do this. No, you yourself, how many hours are you using to study? Is it enough? Are you getting the outputs that you expect? Not based on what someone else is getting. And they always say don't compare your first 3 months of programming with somebody's 30 years of programming experience. There are a lot of people out there, like I watch YouTube videos, there are people who are way younger than me and I see what they are doing, I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, wow, even at this age they could do this, and me, I'm here and I can't do this. But then I know what I'm about. I know it's about my personal progress. Okay, so measure it by yourself. Hey, yesterday you couldn't write a code to do this, today can you do it? Appreciate that instead of looking at, hey, this guy can do this but I can't do that. And who told you that that guy really did that? Who told you that he didn't copy? I mean, you can never tell. So your focus shouldn't be on that guy, your focus should be on you. What can you do? Okay, today you can't do this, you saw somebody do it, you can't do it, you wish you know how to do it, just go and learn how to do it. Me, if I see you do something that I don't know how to do and I want to learn how to do, I'll worry you. Hey, I saw you do this thing, how do you do it? Mostly when I'm around people like that, I don't even talk. Like I'm going to study every bit that you do, then I'll pick it up myself. I'll learn how to do it just by studying you do it. Any other person wants to share his or her thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you know, Julian Babia said something one day. He said there always big people who are better than you, and you may want to focus on them. But the reality is that it's a spectrum. There are some people that you're better than. but it's not human nature to focus on that. So the more realistic metric or what you should actually keep in mind is your own self improvement. Like, okay, are you better than you were 2 weeks ago? So personally for myself, I like to keep myself um like tell myself that I have made progress, like keep track of it. So I have like a folder on my phone and on my laptop for screenshots. So every time I'm going through code, it doesn't make sense. I'm watching a tutorial. I take a screenshot. And just this week, I was looking through that folder and I was like, Jesus, see all these things that didn't make sense 6 months ago. Now I can read them in my sleep. Like, I'll send you some of the screenshot of those, but you laugh. Like 6 months ago, I was looking at a function, a program in C that was taking user inputs and storing them in variables and then using those variables in the program, right, to do a conditional branching tree. And I was like, what's in with this? But now it makes sense. So that's progress. So over 6 months, I can see progress. And I believe that in another 6 months, the things I'm struggling with now, it will seem so easy. Like, how could you have struggled with this? Right? So yeah, that's a more realistic metric. Like,
Oh my goodness.
pace yourself, right? So is how much you actually get done in a year or 2 years that matters, not how much you get done in a week, right? There will be periods where you are more productive, periods where you are less productive, periods where you learn more, periods where you learn less, right? But over 6 months or 1 year or however much time, how much progress you actually make in that total period, right? Nobody's going to ask you how much program you learned in 1 week in 2022 in 5 years time. It doesn't make sense, right? But if you start like coding 2022, 5 years time, how much have you learned since then? That's what they will ask you. So yeah, that's what it should be.
Right, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, clearly.
All right. My light actually just went off.
Okay.
So yeah.